Hi, and welcome to this week's summary lecture. We're going to be covering Chapter 8 today, and I have to confess that probably from about the time that I decided to select this book for this course, I've been dreading doing this summary lecture for somewhat of a non-intuitive reason. Basically, I love theory so much. It actually kind of pains me to think about trying to condense all of these theories into one chapter, and even worse than that, butcher them even more by only discussing a few in a summary lecture, but that is my task. For those of you who don't know, although if you've been in this program long enough, you probably do know by now that as professors, especially at a research institution like WVU, though I spend half of my time teaching, the other half of my time is spent doing research. And there's obviously lots of different types of research that people could do. My research is, however, I would say almost wholly geared towards fleshing out theories like the ones that are discussed in your chapter this week. I'm trying to conduct experiments to try to come up with some sort of reproducible observations that after we observe the same thing happening over and over again, we can make some sort of broader claim about how these types of things that we observe in the laboratory or through survey research can maybe be reproduced if we put the same sort of principles that we're using in the research in place in applied settings like actual campaigns. You guys have heard me talk before about how a lot of what I do is the type of research where we can try to figure out, for instance, a broader theory about why people are responding to a stimulus in a certain way, or why people are performing a certain type of behavior. And if we can do that, then it can help better inform the types of messages that me, possibly, if I want to test it, or practitioners can use in their different campaigns. I know I like hear myself talking right now and I'm like, God, could you be any more vague? And I'm sorry, it's just, that is what theory is for me. It's everything, and I don't know how to like sort of encapsulate it. Your task, though, is going to be hopefully a little bit simpler. And I'll admit that the positioning of this chapter in your textbook is a little perplexing to me, because the types of theories that we're talking about could be applied to really any stage in the campaign development process. We've even talked about some of these before. So we talked about stages of change, for instance, when you were thinking about how to pick an audience. So you've already seen some of this in action. And the truth is that theory is the type of thing that you can use throughout the campaign development process. So it's interesting that they're kind of, your authors have chosen to talk about it here. I think one of the reasons for that, though, is until you have a pretty solid grasp on your topic, which obviously, you know, if you're working for the CDC or if you're working for some sort of organization that's focused on a social marketing campaign, you would already have that. It's nice to have a good grasp on what you want to do, and then you can choose a theory that will help you best accomplish your goals or best understand your audience or whatever your challenge is. I know I'm talking so vague again. I'm sorry. I'm just so verklempt by my love of theory. We are going to talk about some specifics, though. But again, getting back to my original statement, my goal for you is to hopefully pick one theory that you think can help you explain more than perhaps other theories your particular social marketing goals. I'm going to give you some leeway on how you choose to apply that theory. It might be applying it to something we've already talked about. So you might take diffusions of innovations or stages of change models, and in your proposal, use those theories to explain why you've selected a certain audience. Or you might, you know, take bits and pieces from different theories, and I'll try to give you some more examples of how you might do that to rationalize your choice of message, which is something we're going to be doing in the future. The point is, you know, theory is a good way of, with just one swoop, being able to take an entire body of research that has been collected and eventually used to form these theories and models, and then using that to help support all of the decisions you make in your campaign. And the reason we do that, of course, is to give us more confident that what we're doing is going to work and that what we're doing is the appropriate thing for the people we're targeting it to. Okay, enough of the vagueness. Oh my God, we're already like 5 minutes in and I haven't started talking about the theories. I'm not going to talk about all the theories. I chose a couple of theories, not interestingly enough, based on my interests. Some of them are. But I want to highlight a couple of theories that I've picked out from your chapter that I think might help most of you with the type of topics that you are wrestling with. And actually seemed, in my opinion at least, to mesh with some of the things that you're already bringing out and how you're talking about your campaign strategies. Having said that, I really want you to read this whole chapter. I know I always say that, but this time I really mean it. Because some of you might find that some of the theories I don't have time to cover resonate with you even more. Or the nice thing about this class is, remember, it's not like you're going to get a big final exam where I'm testing you on all these theories. So some of these theories might be easier for you to understand. If you don't understand a theory, don't use it. How many times can you say that in a class? If you don't understand a theory, obviously I want you to... I'd love for you to try and ask me questions if you have them or whatever, but try to stick with a theory that you feel like you have a good grasp on in terms of really understanding what it explains, and then of course you can see how it fits in with your pre-existing social marketing campaign. Okay, I've already mentioned these a couple of times, and I thought this would be a good one to talk about since it's kind of a review for some of you. There's a couple of different models that have been proposed that help really explain how people with different mindsets or in different stages of readiness to adopt a behavior can be appealed to or not appealed to in that way. You could call them audience segmentation models. One of them that we've talked about, before is the stages of change model. And I don't want to spend too much time on it, but remember, this is the theory that helps you segment people based on their readiness to accept a message or their readiness to adopt a behavior. So we had pre-contemplation, for instance, which are the people who they haven't even thought about it yet. They might not even know that they should be thinking about it. And the whole point is you would think about those people very uniquely. They would have different steps that you would have to think about. If they're pre-contemplation, part of whatever message you use to target them would have to not just persuade them to adopt a behavior, but really explain to them why they should even think about adopting it in the first place. There was contemplation, preparation, action. You might have a campaign, for instance, that is, most of you don't actually, now that I'm thinking about it, but it's possible. You could have a campaign that is addressing people who are already doing a certain behavior and you're trying to motivate them to keep up with it. For instance, maybe you are targeting exercisers who are already, running a couple times a week or something like that, and this is a campaign to just sort of remind people to stay active or something during the winter months or something. Although it's funny, I think that example just came from a place at WVU where I'm anticipating them to tell us, oh, the weather's getting warm soon, now you should start exercising again. So I guess that would have been for people who have moved back to the preparation stage and stopped exercising when it got cold. But anyway, the point is you can go through all of those different stages of change. And again, some of you have already been doing this, and think about where your audience fits in those stages of change and how, based on where they are already holding with whatever behavior you're recommending, how you want to tailor your campaign for them. Diffusion of innovations, as your book mentions, is one of these similar theories, but honestly much more encompassing, that talks about how people pick up different types of innovations or how different innovations spread or diffuse throughout society. And the interesting thing is about diffusion of innovations is it doesn't just apply to social marketing type things or health behaviors. In fact, I think the original diffusion of innovation study was about how different types of farmers, how different types of seeds were adopted by farmers, and like why some seeds were adopted by some farmers and others didn't diffuse or pick up or get off. So a lot of times you'll see diffusion of innovations applied to questions about like well, why did the iPhone take off, or why did some people, choose the iPhone and other people choose the Android, or something like that? And essentially, diffusions of innovations. Maybe I can't believe I'm going to do this. Let me just draw this out for you. This is like one of the last times this is going to happen. One of the neat things about diffusions, excuse me. One of the neat things about this is, one of the reasons this is such a popular theory is, like all theories, it's got a consistent trajectory, so that you should be able to look at any diffusion and sort of apply this theory on it to understand what's happening. And what diffusion of innovation says is, if you want to understand how anything diffuses throughout society, why some things catch on, you can always look at it as following this pattern. I don't know, can you see that? It's an S curve. Maybe make it a little more solid here. And the way that we do this is by saying, okay, something was just introduced. So maybe some of you are interested in seeing, like, how can we get people to use an app that will help their blood pressure? Well, diffusions of innovations, kind of like the stages of change model, divides people into different categories of adopters. Down here you have what we call early. You're not going to be able to see this. I'm going to give up. You have early adopters at the bottom here. And this is like, this S-curve is about how many people are adopting an innovation. So down here at the bottom, you can see, like, not many people are adopting it. The only people adopting it are these early adopters, okay? And what we know about early adopters is they are really motivated by novelty, right? They will get a product just because they want to be the first person to have this new gadget. They don't really care if it works or not, right? It's sort of an individual difference. You guys probably know somebody like this in your life, but you'll notice you probably don't know a lot of people like that in your life, because most people we wouldn't consider early adopters. They have to have money, right? They have to have all sorts of things. And then what it says is, like, you end up moving through these different stages of people where, after the early adopters get it, the innovators become a little bit interested because they see some sort of value in the product. The product's still not taking off yet, right? But then you get these majority groups who, once they see that, like, oh, this is becoming a trend, they become interested in it too. And those people like, people in the early majority might just be adopting a product just because they see other people adopting it, right? And here's the point, and again, it goes up, and you can read all the different things in your book, but it's really neat because really every innovation tends to follow this curve. Sometimes it takes 20 years, sometimes it takes 5 months or whatever. But, like, this explains why I don't have it in my office. I don't think so. I've got a, hold on. No, I don't have it. Me and some of my colleagues were given a Google Glass, the little face computers that Google developed, and we got it when Google was first experimenting with it, and that made us early adopters. But I can tell you that it was a complete disaster. Google really did not have the prototype set up for that very well, and in fact, my glass is not really. You can see a picture of me actually on eCampus where I have the glass on or whatever, feeling all cool and stuff for being an early adopter. But that was because, by the way, we study media and technology. So we would be like early adopters. Google Glass hasn't really saturated, right, yet. We don't see it like where it's really taken off and everybody's getting one yet. So Google Glass might go at a very slow rate. I would argue that we haven't even gotten to a point where innovators are getting it yet, right? So some technologies go slower than others. Why this is relevant for campaigns is because a lot of you guys are thinking about trying to ask your audience to adopt different behaviors, yes, but maybe even products, asking people to have first aid kits or something like that. And and diffusion of innovations gives you tools to sort of understand how, based on whether you think your audience is in this early majority or an early adopter, or if they're laggards, the people who were like the last people to adopt it. You see that in social marketing a lot because they'll need a little extra push. Everybody else in society might have something and they're still, they still have like television sets with antennas. You know what I mean? So pushing them along might require something different than pushing the other people along. So, okay, once again, I've talked way too long about that. Another important one, I'll sort of like skip ahead, that I want you to know about that overlaps with what we've already been doing is the health belief model. And the health belief model, it's not really a theory about how things work or spread. It's more of kind of a list of considerations or a checklist of things that need to happen before somebody would adopt a behavior. A lot of this stuff, again, should be kind of intuitive. But until you actually use the list and really think about how people feel about the behavior you're recommending, you might not have a good handle on whether or not your approach is going to work or not. So let me give you an example. The health belief model says that in order for people to adopt a behavior, a healthy behavior, obviously, is what we're talking about, they have to perceive some sort of susceptibility. If I'm running a safe sex campaign to a bunch of teenagers who feel like, they're immortal and they don't really have any risk or vulnerabilities, then it doesn't matter what techniques I use. If they don't think that they're at risk, then they won't comply with that behavior. Why would they? The health belief model, I'm sorry, man, I think I'm like allergic to dry erase markers. My nose has been itching ever since I was up there. That is the last time I ever draw on the board for you. So perceived seriousness, benefits of action. Remember how we talked about all those barriers and benefits? The whole time I felt like this was all going into the health belief model, because let's say that people feel susceptible. They feel like they're at risk at something and they think it's a serious problem. So they think, yeah, like getting HIV/AIDS would be terrible. But let's say that and of course they see benefits to the action you're recommending. They're like, yeah, safe sex would be great. I think I can see the benefits that would help protect me, all of these things. But what if there's some sort of barrier? What if, for instance, they have a partner who's unwilling to engage in safe sex with them or something like that? Those are the types of things you would also want to know, because those are the things your campaign is going to have to address. You could check everything off the list in the health belief model and then be left with this one thing, and that would be an automatic clue that what you really need to focus on is removing perceptions of that barrier. And I should actually mention that word perceived, you'll notice if you look to all the little elements of the health belief model, they always say perceived, because a lot of times people will perceive problems and they're not even there. And one study, forgive me if I've already brought this one up, because another class I'm teaching right now, we read this study where in Tanzania or some other country, that's exactly what they were doing. They were not for they weren't trying to prevent the spread of STDs, but they were concerned with having people adopt better family planning methods. They were having population problems, and there were a lot of poverty problems because women were having children and they weren't spacing them out very much. So a woman would have a baby and then 9 months later she would have another baby, that kind of thing. So the goal wasn't to stop population, it was just to I guess you could say, convince people that they could have more control over their reproductive lives. And one of the things they found was that most women were aware of the contraception opportunities they had. They could afford it. They knew where to get it. They believed it would help, all these things. But they assumed that their partner would be opposed to it for religious reasons or something like that. So the campaign actually focused on trying to convince spouses to talk with each other about family planning. And when they did that, forget what there was a barrier, the perceived barrier disappeared because they realized that their spouses weren't opposed to it. And once that barrier was lowered, again, all the other mechanics that need to happen, according to the health belief model, could take place. So again, these don't necessarily, they can be, but they don't necessarily have to be actual barriers. They could just be perceived barriers. I've got two more. I know this is so long. Okay. Yeah, I still got to go over these two. Okay, sorry. Social cognitive theory, I am a huge fan of this. This is one I specifically picked out because I use it a lot in my own research. Social cognitive theory is, in a nutshell, saying that in order for people to adopt some sort of behavior, and again, this doesn't even, good or bad, social cognitive theory could apply to bad behaviors too. Like, why would somebody pick up smoking? Well, people have to perceive some sort of benefit outweighing the downsides. So if a kid was going to start smoking, they would have to say that, like, oh, the social benefits outweigh any of the health risks, which I know, but isn't that what happens? The other criteria is that people have to have self-efficacy, which means that they have to believe that they have the ability to enact whatever behavior they're considering. So I might think that there are benefits of, let's say, quitting smoking, but I don't really feel like I have the efficacy to do it because I feel like I'm addicted. I don't really believe in myself to perform that behavior. Yeah, of course I can see exercise would help, but I don't really have confidence that I could maintain a regular exercise regime, okay? The interesting thing about social cognitive theory, though, is that, because this is actually, I would say self-efficacy is a theme that you see running throughout a lot of these health theories. But the interesting thing, in my opinion, about social cognitive theory is it says, well, how do we get that self-efficacy? And Bandura, the guy who developed it, was very interested in what we call vicarious learning. We get self-efficacy, the belief that we can perform a behavior, by observing others or even having the experience ourselves. So have you ever had the experience of, like, oh, you start to work out and you're like, I can do this. Great. Well, Bandura says that personal experience isn't the only way we can learn things. We can also vicariously learn things by watching others. So I see somebody else smoke a cigarette, maybe even in the media or on television, and all of a sudden it's like, maybe I've never picked up a cigarette in my life, but I think that looks easy. I think I could do that. It's especially likely to happen if you see somebody that's similar to you performing the behavior. So in the example that I gave you earlier of the women who were contemplating adopting some more formalized family planning methods, actually what they did in this campaign is they used a radio program that had different characters, and a big focus of the show was showing these characters who use family planning or didn't use family planning. And the idea was that people who were listening to the radio show, it was kind of like a soap opera, if they felt similar to the character and they saw the character talking to their spouse about family planning, it gave the listeners, it gave the audience members more self-efficacy that they too could adopt those, talk to their spouse about family planning. So again, that's one of the reasons I love social cognitive theory so much, is because it's so applicable to any sort of media message. And as far as how you might think about it for your own campaign is, maybe in your campaign you need to have some sort of model that people could emulate, and the reason for that would be, again, giving them a model that would make them feel more efficacious about performing whatever behavior you want them to do to begin with. Okay, finally, I mean it, I know this is so long. The other thing I just wanted to sort of point out was there are also, and your book says an ecological model, but there's actually lots of ecological models. An ecological model of health behavior, I think another word for it would be a holistic perspective on health. A lot of the theories that we've been talking about, and a lot of the ways that we've actually been talking about the different social marketing goals that we have, is trying to affect individual level behavior. Think about the stages of changes that we just talked about. So it's like, oh, people have it in their head that they're ready to think about this, or they're not ready to think about it, as if like health behavior is only a matter of psychology. Ecological models of health say it's not just about the individual. It doesn't mean that they take away individual responsibility. They still account for that. But with an ecological model, you take in socio-cultural factors, you take in political factors, you take in relational factors, like those, kind of like what we were just talking about with the husbands and wives having to make decisions together. Meaning, family planning isn't just a one-person decision, it's something that two people have to decide on. So a campaign that only focuses on the individual is going to be a little bit short-sighted. I was actually introduced to ecological models of health, and when I was in doc school, we were talking about the nutrition and nutrition needs in a low-income community. And you know, a lot of campaigns will say, hey guys, put down the cheeseburgers and go get some fruits and vegetables. But the problem is, and I think I've used this example as some summary lecture before, is that, well, that's all fine and well, but what if your community doesn't have a grocery store? You can talk all you want about, like, oh, how people are supposed to change their behaviors, but if they don't have access to what they need to change the behavior, then they're not going to do it. And that would be an ecological factor, because it's looking at the whole community. It's looking at the whole ecosystem of factors that affect the decisions people make. It could be a policy thing, you know. Maybe there's some sort of policy that prevents people from adopting some sort of behavior. It doesn't even have to be political. I mean, if you're talking about maybe a medical behavior, or, you know, maybe you're doing something on, oh, this is an interesting one I never thought about for social marketing. I've been seeing a lot of things about the reducing C-sections in the country, you know, and especially elective C-sections. So it's like, we don't want women to go and schedule C-sections like it's something normal. Well, that's all fine and well. And I, you know, I'm actually kind of pro that. But at the same time, what if there are hospital guidelines, you know, that make it so that doctors are less willing to not give women C-sections in certain scenarios or something like that. So again, those would be things that are outside of the individual's control, but certainly bearing down on their decision. And your job as a social marketer would be to consider those things from an ecological perspective, to have a more holistic look about why people are making decisions, so that you can either focus on behaviors that are within the realm of possibility and don't butt heads with any of those things, or you can actually focus on changing the ecology, changing the system, on having husbands and wives talk to each other and things like that. God, this is definitely the longest one ever. I'm actually really sorry about that. I'm stopping it right now so that you guys can work on your worksheet. Thank you for your patience. As always, I appreciate it. Bye. Oh, sorry about this shadow too. I don't actually look at the screen when I'm recording, and I'm still going on. I'm stopping. Okay, bye.